Welcome Jimmy to stage. He's the cowboy. The cowboy.
So I think you might want to take the mic down. Sorry for that. I apologize for walking in front of the monitor or whatever. But good to see you. Hola, Buenos Aires! All right, so my talk today is called Fiat versus Bitcoin. And I know many of you have like the translation things, and I'm just going to make it even harder for the translators by introducing a third language. You guys speak Spanish, I speak English. I am going to talk about Latin because that's where the word fiat comes from. All right, so this is Latin, and this is Genesis 1:3 in Latin from the Latin Vulgate, for those of you who are familiar. Dixitque Deus fiat lux et facta est lux. And roughly translated, that means, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. You can see the word fiat in there. It means let there be. And that's where that word comes from. And when we talk about fiat money, it really means let there be money, right? So fiat is actually a verb, but in the case of fiat money, it turned into an adjective describing the type of money. It's money where somebody decrees that there be a particular type of money. So in English, at least, fiat means by decree. Someone saying so, okay? It becomes an adjective, right? And really, that's what fiat means. It's creation by decree. And here's the thing about fiat money. When we look at it, it's this illusion of that things will happen just by decreeing it be so, by saying so, right? And this is common of a lot of kings and dictators throughout history. All of these people that thought they were gods because they could just say, let there be a pyramid, and there would be a pyramid, or let there be, you know, this territory that's mine, and they would go to war and go conquer that stuff. It's the illusion that things will happen just by decreeing it be so. Of course, the question that we have to ask is who or what actually makes it so? Who's actually doing what's necessary to make that happen? I can say let there be pizza, but unless somebody makes that pizza, it doesn't happen. Somebody has to go and make that pizza. So really, fiat, somebody has to put in that time and energy to make it so. And it's this mentality of those people that are in government in particular that has created these bad incentives. And ultimately, it requires force to make it so. So for a lot of people, when you're looking at fiat mandates of some kind, they will fine you or make you do it via guns, violence, some use of force. And that's what fiat is ultimately based on. And that means that, one of the ways in which this happens is through taxation. Now, direct taxation mandates, decrees, those generally don't go over very well with the population. In fact, this is one of the main ways throughout history in which, revolutions happen. I don't know what that is. Revolutions happen because there's too much taxation. Revolutions happen because there are too many mandates, when you force people to do something. And what's interesting is that you can still kind of do it with fiat money. Fiat money is sort of this alternative way of getting people to do things. And it's done through soft mandates, and it's done through money printing. You could still get people to do stuff, but as long as you control the money, what you can do is say, hey, here's some money, you go and do this stuff. It feels like a market force, but it's not, because they control the money printer. It has the veneer of market forces because of the monetary compensation, but it's really theft. It's really theft. It feels like people are actually getting right value for whatever it is that they're doing, but really it's theft because it's money printed out of thin air. It's stealing value from everybody else and giving it. So we're kind of being tricked because it's just as tyrannical as mandates and decrees. It's just done in a soft way with this veneer of capitalism. So instead of demanding someone do something, they get tricked into doing something through the mechanism of money printing. And this centralizes power, right? Because the money printer gets to decide who does what. And that theft is extremely subtle and not obvious, which is why there aren't revolutions right now. But you can kind of see it because you see it in the inflation that's happening, in the cost of everything going up. And the result is centralized power with a gentle, benevolent authoritarianism, or so they say. It's not gentle at all in some cases, but that's what they use in order to get you to do the things that they want you to do and not what you want to do or what the market demands. And ultimately, it's a soft form of slavery. It's a soft form of slavery because they control the money. And if they can print money and get you to do things that you would not otherwise do, then they kind of control you, and they control your time. And this leads to a lot of anti-civilization incentives, including cheating and theft become extremely widespread. The thing about printing money is that you're really stealing from everybody else. When you steal from everybody else, well, it's a zero-sum game or a negative-sum game. There's nothing being built there. It's just sort of redistribution of wealth. And of course, you're actually cheating other people out of the value that they've provided legitimately. And it feels kind of like a cheat code to civilization, where you don't really have to provide value, and very few people know that you're stealing. Over the last 50 years, think about where the brightest and smartest people have gone, right? They used to go into, exploring oil and gas or, building nuclear submarines or whatever. But since 1971, where have all those people gone? Well, they've gone into investment banking. Why? Not because they are so passionate about investment banking. No. They get into investment banking because that's where the money is. That's where all the money printing is. It's much easier to be an investment banker, make hundreds of millions of dollars they work 80 hours a week or whatever, but they don't provide that much value. And very few people know that they're stealing. So all of these people go into these industries that ultimately don't provide that much value. In fact, provide negative value. And bureaucracy grows like cancer and destroys a lot of civilization. And you can see this in graphs, I don't have them up here, of, for example, hospital administrators versus doctors in healthcare. Administrators there are way more administrators now, whereas doctors, there's only a few, it's a small increase on a percentage basis. But bureaucrats, they've been growing like crazy. Same thing with colleges. Same thing with government. Same thing with almost everything. Bureaucracy grows like cancer when you have fiat money because it's easier to be a bureaucrat. You get way more money for providing almost no value. In fact, you're stealing value rather than actually providing a good or service to the market that people want. And that ultimately leads to the ubiquity of politics. You have politics absolutely everywhere under fiat money because rent-seeking positions are political. If you can make $400 million working 80 hours a week, wouldn't you want to do that? Everybody wants to do something like that. your own life, being self-sovereign, you depend on others, specifically the government, to solve these things for you. This becomes a political issue, and that's what dominates a lot of politics. Finally, it's all about appearances and not truth. It's all about appearances and not truth. And that's part of the whole political game. If you appear a certain way, that's way better than actually fixing the problem underneath. Market processes tend to fix the root problem or solve the root problem that people have. Political solutions tend to be band-aids over whatever problem there might be. So you might think you're fixing healthcare by giving huge subsidies to healthcare companies, but there's no evidence that people are actually healthier. In fact, they're actually way less healthy. You know? And really, politics penetrates absolutely everything, and you can kind of feel it in every fiat economy. There's no more of sort of like government keeping out of anything. Now, Bitcoin, on the other hand, has a very different sort of ethic, and it has a very different set of incentives. First of all, Bitcoin requires real work to produce and can't be cheated, unlike fiat money. If somebody can make that money, well, they're going to cheat. It's just a matter of time. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can't cheat, and that's the virtue. And market forces determine what gets done, not politics. It's what people want. It's what people are willing to pay for that determine what gets done. And under a sound money, you have more of the things that people actually want and need instead of the things that the centralized authorities think are good for you. And people that make things that people want get rewarded. They're the ones that get rich, instead of the investment banker that did 1,000x leverage on some FX trade. And really, Bitcoin is based on voluntary trade and not on being forced to do something. Now, taxation under Bitcoin is also very different. Under sound money, all taxation has to be explicit. There's an implicit taxation with fiat money just by expanding the supply. But under sound money, you have to explicitly tax everybody. You have to say, okay, well, you have to pay us this much money for doing this. You have to actually go out and collect it. And that means that budgets also have to be balanced. You can't just spend money you don't have. The U.S. Yearly deficit is somewhere on the order of $1 trillion. You can't do that anymore. They have to be balanced, or you have to go and borrow the $1 trillion. And who's going to lend you $1 trillion? If you're getting that from the market, the interest rate on that is going to be insanely high. There's a story of King John, who was ruler of England around the 11th century. And he wanted some loans so he can fight a war. The merchants that lent him the money gave him a 216% interest rate because they didn't think he would pay it back. And they thought, okay, well, after 6 months, we make our money back, and at least that's good. And of course, he didn't pay it back. Budgets have to be balanced as a result. And that means that, you can't have these prolonged wars because they'll just bankrupt you. You have less war. The thing that was interesting about World War I was that it was enormously long for, the size of the conflict. Europe had many conflicts that were similar in scope that didn't expand to be 4 years. What changed in World War I was that fiat money was available, so escalation didn't cost anything. And you can steal the wealth of your citizens. Every country could steal the wealth of their citizens so that they can continue escalating the war, and that's what happened. And finally, people have a true economic veto. If they really don't want something to happen, if they don't like war, if they don't like certain programs, they can just say, well, all right, I'm not going to do what you say. and they can revolt. And you know, taxation is really the driver of a lot of revolts, like I said. And that becomes your economic veto. And we get decentralized power as a result. Every piece of taxation requires real justification. It's very hard for a politician to sell you on new taxes unless they say, okay, well, you're going to get this, this, and this as a result. And if they don't keep that promise, well, you know, their budgets are going to reflect it. There's real consequences. Right now, there are no consequences. You know, you just keep taxing through inflation, and you can kind of do whatever you want. There's real, taxation becomes much, much harder. And that means limited government power. We get some self-sovereignty back. And you can see that in the world today, every government is trending towards more and more centralized power, authoritarianism, you know, surveillance state, and so on. And under Bitcoin, you get real freedom because you are self-sovereign over your own coins. You have access to your own wealth, and no one can take it away. Whereas under fiat, somebody can take it away. And that freedom is the key to all of these things happening. And ultimately, we get pro-civilization incentives. Production and value add becomes widespread, right? Like you get people that provide goods and services that people actually want and need instead of random stuff that gets you in front of the Cantillon line. And you have to provide value to make money. You can't just, you know, sit in a rent-seeking position and make money. I mean, there's still some of that, but it gets reduced drastically. And bureaucracy gets limited by taxation. So you don't have enormous amounts of bureaucracy that you do in fiat money. And lastly, you get the ubiquity of merit. People go to jobs that best suit their talents, not what's easiest or rent-seeking. And it becomes all about truth and not propaganda. And it penetrates everything. We get merit everywhere in the economy instead of politics. So this is why I say fiat must be destroyed. Because fiat is about enslavement, destruction, and lies, whereas Bitcoin is about freedom, building, and truth. Fiat delenda est. This is what I want you to, this is the phrase that I want you to walk away with. Now, this is kind of nonsense in Latin, because like I said, fiat is a verb. But fiat delenda est comes from this phrase, Carthago delenda est. And it comes from this man, Cato the Elder. And he was a senator in Rome, and he would end every speech in the Roman Senate with Carthago delenda est. What was Carthago? Carthage was an empire that was a rival to Rome. And he realized that as Rome was expanding, that they would inevitably clash. Now, we don't really actually know very much about the Carthaginians because Rome did destroy Carthage. In fact, they destroyed it and left the city for dead, and it wasn't revived for many centuries. That's how crushingly they killed them. Fiat delenda est. We need to kill fiat because it is immoral and it is destroying our civilization. And that means destroying the entitlement mentality, punishing rent-seeking, and making truth great again, thus preventing theft. All right, thank you.
Bueno, thank you, Jimmy. Les recuerdo, todos los que no entiendan inglés y están acá diciendo de qué caso está hablando, hay auriculares ahí afuera, ¿sí? Que traducen todo. Si les aburre, les cansa escuchar el inglés, por más de que saben escuchar el inglés y dicen, yo sé, no me lo pongo, también pueden ponérselo, ¿sí? No es ninguna vergüenza usar los auriculares. Bueno.